ABC 27 Digital Now Center. This is Beyond the Forecast with your most accurate local meteorologists.
All right, who's ready for a weekend storm? I know that for many of us, it is exciting to talk about this as we move into really the second half of the weekend and what is going to happen. Everybody is wondering, thinking, planning, and looking to the ABC 27 weather team for answers. And we will try to give you some answers, but I still think there are some things, even at this late hour, that we don't know. And some of these we are not going to know, after all. We are going to, of course, do our best to tell you what we think is going to happen, but the reality of it is these storms can take on a life of their own and evolve over time. That's not to say we don't have any clue what's going to happen. We've got a pretty good idea, but there are nuances at play here, and we're going to continue to watch this storm evolve. It's just starting to take shape now across the deep south, moving into Texas, and it will spread and affect most of the country. So the headlines today, as we look at East Pennsboro and the snow melting yesterday with highs near 50 degrees and blue sky and sunshine today, really setting the table for this. It's going to be blustery, and that wind is going to push in Arctic air. And I mean Arctic air. Wait until you see the maps we're going to show you. And then a heavy snow on the way Sunday, but it's also going to mix with sleet. There's no getting around it, and that is really going to play with our total. So Millersburg Middle School looking good this morning, just a few cirrus clouds overhead. Again, the snow there is gone. Remember, our eastern counties had the most snowpack last weekend, and because of that, it's still colder there. Lancaster, for example, is at 20 degrees this morning, 30 in Harrisburg and York. And again, may I remind you that snowpack locks in the cold. So if we get several inches of snow on Sunday, as I think we will, then it's going to be that much colder next week, and we already are talking about Arctic air. We're about 5 to 10 to 15 degrees colder this morning than yesterday across the state. So the cold is already starting to set in, and the breeze. It's a little bit breezy here, but you can almost take a dividing line here over the mountains. The winds are coming, and when they do, they're going to bring in this bowling ball of Arctic air, which we will show you. So expect partly cloudy skies today. It's going to be pleasant. It's going to be a nice day, but later on, the winds are going to whip, and it is going to start to feel mighty chilly out here as we move into this afternoon. So I think today, whether you're sitting at 30 now or in the 20s, everybody's kind of going to settle near 30 degrees early this afternoon. And then the winds pick up. It's going to be blustery with temperatures, again, around 30 and winds gusting to near 30 miles an hour. Look at this tonight. Mainly clear skies, an Arctic push of air as temperatures drop to around 5 degrees overnight. And that's not all. Look at these temperatures here. Now, just want to point out, these are current temperatures. This is not wind chill. These are actual air temperatures. Look at where the Arctic air is. Right here up over Canada, and it's going to be pushing to the south today. Harrisburg's at 30, Chicago at 5 below, 20 below in St. Paul, 21 below in Bismarck. Yikes. And that is headed our way tonight. Watch the temperatures drop. Again, early this afternoon, we're near 30. Then we fall into the teens and single digits. Now, I can hear you now. Why is Thackara wasting his time talking about temperature? We want to know about the snow. I get it. But it's important to talk about the setup here, all right? It is going to be very, very Arctic, okay? Temperatures in the single digits and then the teens tomorrow. And that chill, that really good Arctic chill, is going to help to set the stage for Sunday. And it's going to do battle with some warm air. And so that's, again, as always, the tricky part of the forecast. Just when you think we have enough cold air to make everything all snow, the warm air says, not so fast, my friend. It's going to be blustery here today. The winds back off a bit tonight, but look at tomorrow morning. We still have winds at about 10 miles an hour. Now, why is that important? Watch the wind chills. If you're heading out tonight, and again, the weather is fine to go out tonight and all day Saturday if you have plans. Temperatures, though, are going to be cold. Look at the wind chill values overnight and tomorrow morning. It could feel like 10 to 15 below. When I say this air mass is Arctic and something that we haven't seen in a while, I mean it. We're not used to it. And then the problem is going to be whatever we get on Sunday is not going to melt. And so, I remember a couple of winters as a kid back in the 90s, we'd get these big snowstorms, and then it would just go into a deep freeze for a couple of weeks after. That's what this is going to be, no matter how much snow we get. And then temperatures will lock into the single digits with the wind chill values throughout the day on Saturday, even with just a light breeze, because I don't think Saturday is going to be that windy. So partly cloudy today. Tonight we clear out, a sunny start on Saturday, and cold, very cold tomorrow. The clouds will increase in the afternoon. Now, here's the change from yesterday. I don't think this storm starts really until right before dawn on Sunday, sometime between 3 and 6 a.m., because what's going to happen is this storm is going to have some cold, dry air to overcome, okay? And here you can see the dry air. So for some of us, this storm is not going to start until really dawn on Sunday, but it's going to push in from the southwest, and then I think really from about 6 a.m. to noon on Sunday. That is going to be the nasty part of the storm, the brunt of the storm, when it's snowing 1 inch an hour, 2 inches an hour. And it's so fluffy because it's so cold. This is not going to be heavy, wet snow that it's going to pile up and really accumulate. So let's say from 6 a.m. until noon, it snows at 1 inch an hour. Well, there's 6 inches right there. If it snows at 2 inches an hour, which I think it could for some of you, then you're going to get over 6 inches. So that's why we think sort of the floor here is 8. Now, the problem is, watch what happens in the afternoon. This keeps the snow going for most of us through the afternoon. So then we start talking about totals over a foot. But I'm going to tell you right now, based on experience and based on things that we know, here's this mixing line. Here's that warm nose. Okay? And I'm telling you right now, this thing is going to be further north than modeled, because it always is. This is where you have to use some experience, okay? And it's going to happen earlier, okay? I think by noon it could be sleeting in spots, especially this area right here. So if that's the case, you've got 6, maybe up to 8 inches, then it starts to sleet. Those snow totals are not going to get much higher than that. So I know everybody wants to throw around a foot of snow. If you watched me yesterday, I talked about the fact that it is very, very rare to get a foot of snow from one storm here. We tried to do it in December 2020. Guess what? We had 11.6 inches or 11.2 inches. We never made it to a foot. Why? The sleet took over, and it just ruined the totals. I think we were, at the time maybe calling for, again, up to 18 inches. The sleet came in, just ruined the second half of the storm. I could see the exact same scenario playing out here. Now, listen, if the cold air is, again, going to try to sink south and try to really nudge this sleet off, if for some reason that would win, and it rarely does, then we're going to get higher totals, because then it will stay snow into the afternoon. But I just can't ignore the sleet. I mean, you just can't. Not around here. And then we start to see a dry slot working in by Sunday evening. The storm should be out of here by midnight on Monday. So by the time we wake up on Monday, it'll be time to dig out. We're going to be clear, but it's going to be very cold, and it's going to be breezy. And if we don't get much sleet, or for those areas across the region that don't see a lot of sleet, then we have to be concerned about blowing and drifting, because this snow is going to be light and powdery. So here's the timeline. After 3 a.m., so between roughly 3 and 6 a.m., the snow's going to develop, and it will accumulate a bit through dawn, with the heaviest part of the storm being Sunday morning. Again, 6 a.m. through about noon, 2-inch-per-hour rates. The travel's going to be greatly impacted. It's really going to be coming down. Now, anytime afternoon, I really think is when we could see sleet mixing in. If you want a big snowstorm, you just got to hope the snow holds, because then we're going to get some of those higher totals, okay? So sleet mixing in during the afternoon and evening, and then the storm is going to push out. Now, here's Precisioncast, okay? And this puts down about a foot of snow. That's great. Problem is, I think the model also incorporates sleet, because sleet will accumulate too and mix with snow. But this gives us a very good snowfall for Sunday. We're not disputing that. The problem is, again, we give ranges, right? 6 to 12, 12 to 18, yada, yada, yada. This is not going to be a 1 to 3 or 3 to 6 inch snowstorm like we're used to. I do think we get enough snow on the front side of this Sunday morning to warrant a pretty decent range. But as the sleet mixes in, and especially if it mixes in south of Route 30 here, this is where I think you might see closer to 8 inches. And then if you're up here, right, where it's probably going to stay colder, this is where you might see a foot or more. Now, why not make 2 contours and show that? Because, listen, Here's the part that frustrates me. I know everybody wants numbers. Snow totals are very tough to forecast, right? You know that. I know that. I'm a meteorologist, and I can admit that. This is going to be a fairly uniform event across the region. What we don't know yet is just exactly where the sleet is going to mix in. So why get cute? You know, that sleet line could come all the way up to Harrisburg on Sunday, and then Harrisburg may only get 8 inches. All right? So instead of trying to get cute and figure that out, listen, 8 to 14 inches is a good solid 6-inch range. Some of you are going to get 8 if the sleet mixes in early. Some of you are going to get over a foot if it doesn't. And again, I don't see us adjusting these numbers up right now. If anything, they would have to be a little bit less because of this sleet mixture, and we're gonna talk to you about that here coming up in just a bit. But this sleet is, of course, always an issue for us here as we look ahead with these storms. So the 10-day temperature trends are showing that the cold just locks itself in. I mean, next week, we don't see 30 degrees again. Today, for example, may be our last day of 30-degree high temperatures for the next week through the end of the month and into February, for example. So here's the 3-day forecast, a partly cloudy and blustery day today. And yes, we're going to go into the model world here in a second. Increasing clouds on Saturday with an Arctic front barreling in, and then heavy snow and sleet on Sunday, 8 to 14 inches, and that will be followed here by some very, very frigid weather. So, again, let's show you the model world because, if nothing else, we do like to talk about the models. And we want to show you the very latest runs here because we feel it's important to give you a peek behind the curtain. After all, that's why we say we're going to go beyond the forecast. So when we look at our European model, and this is the latest run, this matches up fairly well with our forecast. Now, I'll highlight a couple of things. The brunt of the region here is projected to get, you can see the numbers, 10, 11, right up to a foot here across the heart of the viewing area. Now, you have to factor in the fluff factor, which means higher ratios. So that's why, even though these give, about 10 to 14 inches, well, we're thinking that, about 10 to 12 inches. With that fluff, some areas could get more than a foot here. Now, notice southern York, southern Lancaster County, this is where the numbers look a little different. 6 to 8 inches being spit out by the model here. Again, you factor in some fluff, you up it by a couple of inches, and you get 8 to 10. So if this area is the only area that gets sleet, that's fine. Now, I do want to take you, though, through the NAM model, because the NAM model is a model that oftentimes can do well with mixing. We've seen this in the past. It's a higher resolution model, and it can show that mix coming in perhaps a little bit earlier than some models. So we're going to take you through here, and we're going to show you the NAM model, because I want you to pay attention to this. This can pick up perhaps on some of that mixing. Here comes the Arctic air for tomorrow morning, and there's that high, and then I'm going to slide this over. Now, this has the snow starting, and it's going to have to fight some dry air at the beginning. That's the other thing. When does the storm really get cranked? I don't think it's overnight Sunday. I think it's Sunday morning. This shows a nice snow coming in by Sunday morning, really snowing good. Watch the mixing line. Watch this. Watch how this thing just wants to creep and creep and creep, okay, farther to the north. Here it is. This is by noontime. Look at the purple. Look at that warm air. You're not going to stop it. You're just not going to stop it. And so that's why that sleet is a factor. You want to see the totals the NAM model spits out? Now, for now, it's an outlier. But I'm going to show that to you because, again, it's significantly different with each passing model run as that warm air starts to move in. Here's the NAM totals, right? I don't see any double-digit totals on here. I see 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I see 4s and 5s down across the southeast. I'm going to preach this until I'm blue in the face, folks. And that is this warm tongue of air. The only difference this time that I could say that may stop it is that this Arctic air mass is very cold and very dense, and perhaps maybe it could win out and keep the warm air south. If that happens, then we get 12, 13, 14 inches. But if that warm air wins out, like it usually tends to do, we're not getting a foot of snow. It's that simple. We may get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're not going to get a foot of snow if the warm air wins out, and it usually does. So you can call me a skeptic. You can call me whatever you want. You can say we're too low with our totals. That's fine. Listen, if we're calling for 8 to 14 inches and your backyard gets 16 or 18, I'm fine with it. We're not going to nail every total. Maybe you do. And I'm telling you that right now before the event starts. It is certainly possible. If the cold air wins out, somebody could see maybe 16, 18 inches of snow. But I just have rarely seen the sleet hold off. So, I think 8 to 14 feels like a good number. The NAM is lower than that now, and some models are still a bit higher than that. So I think that's a pretty good range. Here's the bottom line. Again, we talk about impact. It's going to snow. It's going to sleet. It's going to have a big impact on Sunday. So stay in. Watch us. We're going to be with you tracking it all. And this is a storm, too, that will evolve. As it's snowing 2 inches, 1 inch to 2 inches per hour, we're going to be measuring it. We're going to be out live. We're going to be showing it to you. As the changeover occurs to sleet, if it happens earlier or later, we're going to be with you the whole way. And this is a storm we're just going to have to watch unfold together. But the forecast. I've tried to break down the science of it all for you. I hope you understand it. I've tried to make it somewhat easy. It's always a complicated process, especially here in central Pennsylvania. For now, we'll be back later. Dan Tomaso and I are going to have an update on our ABC 27 News Plus app a little later this afternoon. You could tune in for that. Always good to talk weather with Dan and Eric, and we will continue our updates through the weekend. Stay tuned, everybody, and have a great Friday.